We've been on a journey. We go ahead and click on cameras. And we've been talking about how then should we live. And we about a year ago we began kind of wrestling with the way that we've been taught to read the Bible and the way that we understand this journey of faith. And that is what we've always been taught, really the way it is. And looking back to the scriptures and the stories of those that came before what we were taught about them, and to find sometimes what we were taught is not really what was there. To find that God really is about mercy and a new way of living. And then this past summer especially, we explored what would that look like in the world this way if we lived out deeply this belief that God is present in the world, bringing healing and promising that all things will be restored. And so we've been exploring these past few weeks now, a couple of months, about our own tradition of where that's come from. And we've talked about a way of seeing, a way of hearing, a way of teaching, and now maybe a way of following. We can click on. We talked about this way, that we actually have come back from a Lutheran background, but as Martin Luther King talked about America, he said it's not the reality, but the dream of a place where everyone can live together as brothers and sisters. The things that we've talked about is more of a dream of the way of being church, and not going back simply to the time of the Reformation, but to the early church. A way of seeing, a way of hearing, a way of teaching, and a way of following. Back, click on. We talk about this way of seeing is understanding that God comes to us most clearly in our moments of brokenness, in our pain, in our struggles, and that God comes bringing healing. And especially we meet God in the gifts of baptism and communion in our times of worship. We also understand, click on it if we could, an understanding of a way of hearing in which we don't look at the scriptures as words to be read or even as propositions to be believed, but this is a place that God breaks into our lives, as God does in all places of our lives, inviting us to a new way of living. And we also talk about a way of teaching, that we understand that God is about an unconditional love for us, that invites us always to come back to that we are connected with those who come before and those who will go after, but always we must come back to that place of love. And now we've begun to explore this way of following, understanding that God is about what we call a theology of the cross rather than a theology of glory. That God doesn't come with power and might, but God comes in that brokenness and invites us into that same way. So we want to begin to explore this. And to do that, I want to share some clips from the movie The Mission. That's okay. We don't have to turn the volume up, though, on the other. Thank you.
Insects and twigs not. No converts. Few. How many near fish? I can all. You know Rodrigo Mendoza? Yes, I know him. Come with me. I have a chance for you. I think you're the only one who can do it. He's been here for 6 months, but he won't see anybody. I think he wants to die.
are changing the electrical, the wiring here, and so right now we can't control turning the lights off to make it a little dark. This was from the movie The Mission, and last week we watched a few clips from this where we really kind of talked about, in many ways, the failures of us, not only individuals, but as the church through history. That so often we as the church have taken a way of I guess, buying into the way things work in the world and not remembering what we're to be about. And we especially looked at the failure of institutional church, and I shared about one of my professors in seminary who talked about how as soon as something becomes an institution, we often forget what our mission was about, and we focus on keeping the institution going, regardless of what our mission was. And we also talked about, though, what we've called through the history of the faith, what's been called the thin tradition, a different way of living, and what we want to talk about today with following, a way of following. This is a scene, again, from the movie The Mission, and one of the main characters there is, did you recognize Robert De Niro? All right. His character, Mendoza, is, as he said, a slave trader and a mercenary. And he's caused a lot of difficulty with the Jesuit priests who have been trying to reach out to the natives, the Indians. And one of the main things he's done is he's kidnapped Indians to make them into slaves. He's also been a mercenary, and so he's lived by the sword. And his world seems perfect to him. He has everything he wants. And then he finds out that the woman he loves is actually in love with his brother. And in a jealous rage in a duel, he kills his brother. And so for 6 months, he's been in this place, slowly wasting away, because he doesn't know what to do with the guilt of that. And so the priest comes to him, and what does he offer him? He's offering him a way out. He says, you're freedom, you chose this way, you're willing to choose the penance. Now, that's an interesting phrase, because in our tradition we haven't used the term penance a lot, I know, especially the Catholic tradition, we lifted up. And it made me think a bit. I have a good friend who's a Catholic priest. We get together like once a month for lunch. And I remember talking about in the Catholic Church, when someone goes through a divorce, you can annul it, and there's this whole process. And he said, there's a lot of downsides to this, but he says the one thing it does is help people deal with things that they might not otherwise have dealt with. And I think penance in some ways does that for us. We think of this as this thing like, how can we do penance? How can we pay for something? And I don't think it's about that. I think what it's trying to do is help us to look at what we've done and to help us to deal with our brokenness and find a way through it. So the penance that Mendoza has, did you pick up what he has to do? Now, at the end of the scene? See what he's dragging behind him? The armor he used as a mercenary, his sword, the stuff that he used as a mercenary to put those people into slavery, the things that have been his way of life, his way of violence. And he's dragging them through the waters, and what you don't know if you haven't seen the beginning of the film is they're heading up above the falls where the Indians that he's been kidnapping and putting to slavery are. So he's going to where they are, the people he's put in slavery. Now, we're going to be watching a few clips because I think I want to really help us explore this other way of Jesus. So let's go to the next one here.
He's done this penance long enough. And, well, the other brothers think the same.
But he doesn't think so, John. He does, I know. They're not the members of democracy, Father. Members of an order.
Is there anything that struck you in that scene? Those two scenes there? Yeah. Did you recognize him actually? Yeah, Liam Neeson, my-gun Jim. I think this is kind of speaks something interesting that you see De Niro, he's like overwhelmed by this. How does it look? Is that he's he's drained, he's got like nothing left, but he won't give it up. He's going to carry this until he gets to where he needs to go. And people from the outside, what do they want to do? Yeah, they want to, let him go. You got to stop making him do this. I think sometimes we forget that there are things that we need to go through in life, and we like to short circuit it. We want to just get out of it. And there's things sometimes, as hard as it is, that we need to go through to learn it. And I think we forget that. It's a hard thing, especially as people, church people, people of faith. That, we want to release other people, and we don't let them go on their own journey. People need to go through that. And I think the other thing to realize is that, when we look at our lives, there are things that we've gone through that we need to go through that struggle, that we've come to a new place because of it, even though we might never want to go back to it. But sometimes